At 7 in the morning, someone started banging on my door like the house was on fire. I opened it half asleep, still in my robe, holding a mug of lukewarm coffee, and there stood my neighbor, Gary, pale as drywall, sweating like he'd just run a marathon in a sauna. He grabbed my arm and whispered, "Frank, don't go outside today. Promise me." I blinked, still trying to figure out if this was a prank or a heart attack in progress. "Gary, it's 7 a.m. I only go outside at that hour if the house is on fire or the mailman's giving out free bacon." He didn't laugh, just shook his head. "By noon, you'll understand everything." Then he turned around and walked off, barefoot. Barefoot in November. I thought either Gary's lost his mind, or I'm about to star in one of those small-town mysteries on TV. By 9 o'clock, curiosity was eating me alive. By 9:30, I was pacing around my kitchen like a retired detective who'd lost his magnifying glass. I peeked through the curtains. Gary's car was still there, but all the blinds were shut tight. Even his dog, Buddy, wasn't barking, and that mutt barks at clouds. I made myself a proper breakfast, eggs, toast, and exactly 3 slices of bacon, doctor's orders, though I suspect my doctor's just jealous. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. "Don't go outside." Why? Did he see something? Hear something? Did the HOA finally ban his Christmas decorations again? He once set up a Santa that moonwalked. Whole street complained it looked possessed. At 10, I decided I'd accidentally check the mailbox, technically not going out, just extending my porch perimeter. But as soon as I reached for the door handle, I saw something move across the street. A dark van. No logos, no sound, just parked there. I froze, mid-motion, like a squirrel that suddenly realizes it's in a traffic lane, and for the first time that morning, I wondered if Gary might actually be right. Still a dark van in our neighborhood? That's like spotting a shark in a kiddie pool. Something strange was happening, and I had a feeling breakfast was about to get interrupted. By 11, the house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes the fridge hum sound like a confession. I tried to distract myself by fixing the squeaky kitchen drawer that's been crying for oil since 2014. But every time I tightened a screw, Gary's voice echoed in my head. "Don't go outside." Finally, I gave up and called him. Straight to voicemail. I left a message that went something like, "Gary, it's Frank. Either you joined the witness protection program, or you're having a nervous breakdown. Call me back preferably before I die of curiosity or boredom." 10 minutes later, still nothing. So, naturally, I did what any rational 72-year-old man would do. I turned my recliner toward the window, grabbed a pair of binoculars, and started my neighborhood surveillance operation. Across the street, Mrs. Henderson watering her plastic flowers again. To the right, the mailman, doing God's work at his usual glacial pace. But Gary's house? Curtains still drawn. Not even a shadow. Then I noticed something odd, a faint flicker of blue light inside. Like a TV, but rhythmic, almost pulsing. I muttered, either he's binge-watching CSI, or he's in real trouble. And just when I was about to look away, I saw someone walk past his window. But it wasn't Gary. The man was taller, broader, and he was wearing black gloves. That's when my bacon settled like a rock in my stomach. For a minute, I just sat there frozen like a deer, except this deer had arthritis and a mug of lukewarm coffee trembling in his hand. Who was that man? And why was he in Gary's house? I lowered the blinds an inch and whispered to myself, "All right, Frank, don't panic. Maybe Gary hired someone to, fix his TV while wearing gloves and breaking in through the back door." Even I didn't believe that one. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? "Hello, officer. My neighbor told me not to go outside, and now there's a man with gloves binge-watching his Netflix." I decided to stay alert, which, at my age, means I made another pot of coffee and sat back down like a retired spy in his own living room. Then, around noon, I saw Gary's front door open. The man in gloves stepped out, carrying a black bag heavy, like it had bowling balls inside. He glanced around, then looked right at my window. I ducked faster than I have in 30 years, which unfortunately involved knocking over my mug, my binoculars, and my self-respect all at once. Coffee soaked the carpet. My heart pounded like it was playing jazz. I sat there, breathless, whispering, "Congratulations, Frank. You've officially joined the senior citizen edition of Mission Impossible." But deep down, I knew this wasn't a game anymore. Because 10 minutes later, my phone rang and the caller ID said Police Department. I nearly spilled what was left of my dignity when I saw Police Department flashing on the screen. I picked up, trying to sound calm, which came out as something between a hiccup and a whisper. This is Frank. I haven't done anything illegal since the Reagan administration." A woman's voice answered, firm but polite. "Mr. Coleman, we'd like to ask you a few questions about your neighbor, Mr. Gary Mitchell." My heart sank. "Is he all right?" There was a pause long enough to make me sweat through my flannel. Then she said, "We'd appreciate if you stayed home for now. An officer will be by shortly to speak with you." Stayed home. Exactly what Gary told me that morning. When the call ended, I just sat there in silence, watching the steam rise from my carpet, because yes, it was still wet from my heroic ducking maneuver. I looked around my messy living room and muttered, if I'm about to be questioned by police, I should at least look innocent. Or at least, like someone who owns a vacuum. So there I was, a 72-year-old man vacuuming in his slippers, muttering prayers and sarcastic comments under my breath. And right in the middle of cleaning, I heard a knock on the door. 3 sharp, official-sounding knocks. I froze again, gripping the vacuum handle like it was a weapon. Somehow, I already knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. I switched off the vacuum, which made an awkward dying noise, the kind that sounds guilty even if you aren't. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood there. A young guy who looked like he still lived with his mother, and a woman about my age who looked like she'd seen every kind of nonsense this town had to offer. "Mr. Coleman?" she asked. "That depends," I said. "If this is about my lawn gnome collection, they were gifts." "Mostly." She didn't smile. "Uh-oh. Bad sign. We're here about your neighbor, Gary Mitchell. He was reported missing this morning." That hit me like a brick. Missing? He was just at my door a few hours ago, told me not to go outside. The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "Did he say why?" "No," I replied, "but he looked like a ghost who'd just seen another ghost, maybe one with better insurance." They asked if they could look around from my porch, so of course I let them. While they were scanning the street, I stood there rubbing my chin, pretending to think deeply, though in reality, I was just trying to remember where I'd left my glasses. Then the young officer pointed. "Sir, was that van parked there earlier?" I turned. The black van was gone. Just tire marks in the wet leaves. The woman sighed. "If he told you not to leave the house, he might have been scared for your safety too." Now that gave me chills. Gary and I used to argue about everything. Football teams, barbecue sauce brands, even which way toilet paper should face. But he'd never sounded truly afraid, until today, and suddenly, the silence around the neighborhood didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like the pause before a storm. When the officers left, the house felt heavier somehow. The air itself seemed to lean on my shoulders. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the half-eaten toast I'd forgotten hours ago. It looked like something from a crime scene, too dry, lifeless, suspicious. I kept replaying the morning in my head, Gary's pale face, his trembling hands, that strange bag carried out by the man in gloves. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated but answered. "Mr. Coleman?" A man's voice, deep, smooth, official. "This is Detective Harris. I understand you spoke with our officers. We found Mr. Mitchell's vehicle near the old quarry. His phone was inside. No sign of him." My throat went dry. "The quarry? That's 5 miles away. Gary can't even walk his dog without complaining his knees sound like popcorn." Harris continued, "We're treating this as suspicious. If you recall anything unusual, anything at all, call me directly." I hung up, leaned back, and muttered, "Anything unusual? How about the fact that my neighbor told me to hide before vanishing like a magician on tax day?" To calm down, I turned on the TV. The local news anchor was smiling that weird, "We know something bad happened, but we're paid to look cheerful" smile. And there it was. Breaking news: police investigating missing local man. Gary Mitchell. I nearly dropped my remote. My living room, my house flashed on the screen behind her. Apparently, I was now a key witness. Well, fantastic. At 72, I'd finally made it on TV. Just not for my cooking show idea. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my landline ringing. Yes, landline. Don't judge me. It's reliable, unlike my ex-son-in-law. Mr. Coleman, this is Detective Harris again, the voice said, sharper this time. We're doing a search in your area today. Please remain available. Detective, I said, rubbing my eyes. If this goes on any longer, I'll start charging rent to the police department. He didn't laugh. None of them ever do. Tough crowd. After I hung up, I looked out the window, police cars, flashing lights, and more people in reflective vests than I'd ever seen outside of a marathon. My quiet little street looked like an episode of CSI. Retirement Village. I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead and sat at the table, thinking, Gary wasn't the kind of man who disappeared. He was loud, stubborn, and allergic to subtlety. He once threw a barbecue in January because he didn't believe in weather. So what could scare a man like that? Just as I was asking myself that question, my doorbell rang again. Only this time, it wasn't a frantic knock. It was slow, calm, almost polite. I opened the door, and there stood a man in a gray suit, holding a leather briefcase and wearing a smile so fake it deserved its own zip code. Good morning, sir, he said smoothly. I believe you're a friend of Mr. Mitchell's. Mind if I ask you a few questions? Depends, I said, narrowing my eyes. You with the police? He hesitated. Something like that. And right then, my gut told me this wasn't someone to offer coffee to. He stepped just inside my doorway, uninvited, which already put him on my suspicious characters list, right under telemarketers and my cousin Earl. The man's suit was neat, but his shoes told a different story, scuffed, muddy, like he'd been somewhere no one wears Italian leather. I'm conducting a private inquiry, he said smoothly. Gary Mitchell may have been involved in certain business matters. You haven't seen anything out of the ordinary, have you? Sir, I replied. The most out of the ordinary thing I've seen this week is you showing up without a badge. He chuckled, like someone who laughs only to show they still have teeth. We just want to make sure Mr. Mitchell's affairs are handled properly. I leaned against the doorframe. Listen, if Gary owed you money, you're about to be very disappointed. The man still owes me for the lawnmower he borrowed in 2019. The fake smile faltered. He reached into his coat, and my stomach dropped, but he only pulled out a business card. No name, just a phone number and 3 initials. R.D.K. Call me if you remember anything, he said, sliding it onto my hallway table before walking off. When he reached the end of my driveway, I muttered, Well, that was subtle. Maybe next time he'll just skywrite. I'm not suspicious over the neighborhood. But when I looked down at the card again, I noticed something else. Faint smudges of blue ink on the edge. The same flickering blue light I'd seen in Gary's window the day before. And for the first time I realized, whatever Gary had gotten himself into, I was now standing on the same chessboard. That little card sat on my table like a live grenade, only quieter and somehow ruder. I stared at it for a while, wondering if RDK stood for really dangerous cook or random dude knocking. Either way, it didn't smell like anything good. To calm my nerves, I did what any sane man would, made myself a sandwich. Peanut butter, banana, and just a hint of existential dread. Halfway through the second bite, I noticed movement outside again, that same dark van, parked 2 houses down. No license plate this time. Just sitting there, engine off, like it was holding its breath. I muttered, Well, there goes my appetite. Great. That sandwich was almost perfect. I closed the curtains, grabbed the card, and stuck it inside my old chess box, the one Gary and I used every Friday night. Funny thing, I hadn't touched that box in months. But when I opened it, there was already something inside that didn't belong. A small flash drive, taped under the lid. I froze. I'd never seen it before. My heart started thumping like it was trying to escape through my ribs. Did Gary put it there? When? I turned it over in my hand. No labels, no markings, just cold metal and 1,000 questions. And then, like clockwork, the phone rang again. Same number as before. Detective Harris. Mr. Coleman, he said, his tone heavier now. You might want to lock your doors. Detective, I said slowly, staring at the flash drive. I think my neighbor left me something. There was a long pause on the line, the kind that makes silence louder than words. Then he said, quietly, Don't plug it in. I set the flash drive down like it was radioactive, which, knowing Gary's luck, wasn't entirely impossible. Don't plug it in, the detective had said. Right. Easy for him to say. He probably had backup organs, but the curiosity, it buzzed in my head like a mosquito you can't swat. Gary must have hidden it for a reason. And if he trusted anyone, it was me, the man who once helped him fix his water heater with duct tape and prayer. So, naturally, I lasted about 6 minutes before I cracked. I closed the blinds, booted up my old laptop, the one that sounds like a lawnmower when it starts, and took a deep breath. All right, Frank, I muttered. If you blow up, at least you'll go viral for something. I plugged it in. The screen flickered. Then a single folder appeared, titled, For Frank if you're seeing this. My heart stopped. He knew. I opened it. Inside there was just one video file. I clicked it, and there was Gary sitting in his living room, eyes tired, voice trembling. Frank, if you're watching this, I didn't make it out, he began. They found out about the footage. The van, they've been watching me for days. My breath caught. He looked terrified, not like the Gary who argued about barbecue, but like a man who'd seen something he shouldn't have. He leaned closer to the camera. I hid copies. One in my garage, one at the quarry, and one with you. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. They're not who they say they are, Frank. Don't trust. The video cut to static. And suddenly, I realized something chilling. That knock on my door earlier, it hadn't been the police. I sat frozen, staring at the screen as the static hissed, filling my living room with the sound of my own heartbeat. Outside, a branch tapped against the window. Just a branch, but it might as well have been Death himself politely asking if I was home. I shut the laptop and whispered, All right, Gary. Whatever you drag me into, I hope it comes with an instruction manual. Then I heard it. A car door shutting, right outside. I peeked through the curtain. The van was back. Same one. Only this time, the driver's door was open, and someone was standing beside it, facing my house. I ducked down, nearly pulling a hamstring in the process, and crawled to the phone. Detective Harris, I hissed into the receiver. If you don't get here soon, there's going to be a 72-year-old man doing his last push-up under a kitchen table. He told me, Stay where you are, we're on our way. Trust me, I said. I'm not auditioning for any marathons today. The next few minutes felt like hours. I could see the man's shadow moving near my porch, slow, deliberate, like he knew I was watching. Then came a knock. Gentle. Too gentle. I froze, clutching the phone like a weapon. He waited. Then slipped something under my door. When the police finally arrived, the van was gone again. Just vanished. But the envelope he left behind was still there. Inside, only one thing, a photo. Gary and me, sitting on his porch last summer, laughing with beers in our hands. And across the back, written in blue ink, We're not done yet. I don't remember sitting down, I just remember the room spinning. And for the first time in years, I felt old. Truly old. Not because of my knees, but because I suddenly realized someone out there remembered me better than I remembered them. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump, the fridge humming, the clock ticking. Even my own heartbeat felt suspicious. I sat in my recliner, wrapped in an old blanket that smelled faintly of nostalgia and arthritis cream, staring at that photo on the coffee table. Gary and I, two old fools who thought the world couldn't surprise us anymore. Turns out, it still had a few tricks left. I kept thinking about that blue ink, the way it shimmered under the lamp, the same color I'd seen flickering through his window. Coincidence. At 72, I don't believe in those anymore. By 2 a.m., I decided if I was going to die of fear, I might as well die doing something brave or stupid, which in my case is a very fine line. So I grabbed my flashlight, my cane, for style and safety, and the old trench coat I used to wear when I wanted to look mysterious at the diner. Then I shuffled across the street to Gary's house. The police tape was still there. I tore a little piece aside and muttered, "Sorry, boys, but Frank Coleman's had enough waiting." Inside, the place smelled like dust and silence. But the TV was still on, frozen on a single blue frame. I crept closer and saw a message burned faintly across the screen. "Look behind the clock." Now, at my age, bending over isn't a hobby, it's a calculated risk. But I did it anyway. Behind the old wall clock, taped to the drywall, was another flash drive. Only this one had my name written on it. And right then, for the first time in days, I didn't feel scared. I felt chosen. Like Gary had trusted me with something even he couldn't finish. But then the clock ticked once loud, sharp even though it wasn't running. And somewhere outside, a car engine started. My flashlight flickered just as that engine roared to life outside. I froze, clutching the new flash drive like it was a winning lottery ticket, except this prize came with heart palpitations. I peeked through the blinds. The same van. Of course. My neighborhood had officially become the least relaxing retirement community in America. The headlights swept across Gary's porch, then turned off. No movement. No sound. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that squeezes the air out of your lungs. I whispered, "All right, Frank. You've survived 2 heart attacks, your daughter's cooking, and a colonoscopy from a rookie doctor. You can handle this." And, somehow, that pep talk worked. I slipped out the back door, shuffle running like a man whose knees signed a non-compete agreement with gravity. Made it home. Locked the doors. Sat at my desk, gasping like I'd just finished a triathlon or at least a brisk shuffle. Then I stared at the flash drive. The words, "For Frank," written in Gary's shaky hand. Should I call the detective again? Sure. Should I wait? Probably. Did I do either? Absolutely not. I plugged it in, and there it was, a single folder titled Truth. Inside, photos, dozens of them. Men in suits, documents. One picture of Gary shaking hands with a man I instantly recognized, the same slick stranger who'd come to my door with the fake smile. But one photo stopped me cold. It was taken from across the street, my house in the frame, lights on, me sitting right where I was now, and at the bottom, a timestamp from this morning. That meant only one thing. Whoever was behind this was still watching me. I stared at that last photo until my eyes stung. My own living room. The same lamp still glowing behind me. And right there in the window's reflection, a dark silhouette standing inside my house. I turned around so fast my hip cracked like thunder. Nothing. Just shadows and silence. "All right," I muttered, voice shaking. "If there's a ghost in here, at least make yourself useful and pay the electric bill." But then a sound, a faint click from the hallway. The sound of my front door unlocking. I grabbed the nearest thing that could pass for a weapon, the vacuum cleaner. Let me tell you, nothing says danger like an old man in pajamas holding a Hoover. The door creaked open, and there he was, Gary, alive, pale, thinner, beard grown out, eyes wild but alive. I dropped the vacuum. You're supposed to be dead!" He stepped in, shut the door behind him. "I know, Frank, and if we both want to stay that way, you didn't see me." He looked straight at me, trembling. "They found out I sent you the files. That second drive, destroy it. Don't let anyone see what's inside." I stared, heart pounding. "Gary, what is this? Who are they?" He smiled, tired, almost peaceful. "The kind of people who smile for cameras and never show up in mirrors." Before I could answer, headlights flared outside again. He froze. "They found me," he whispered, then shoved a small folded paper into my palm. "If anything happens, tell them truth is heavier than fear." Then he slipped out the back door, into the dark. The next morning, the police knocked again. No sign of Gary. No van. Just the faint smell of gasoline near the woods. I didn't mention the flash drives, or the note in my hand. I just smiled and said, "Haven't seen a thing, officer." Not a thing. That night, I finally opened the note. It had only one line, written in that same blue ink. Checkmate isn't the end, Frank. It's just when the other player realizes you've been watching all along. And as I looked out my window, across the quiet street, Gary's porch light flickered once, then twice, then went out for good. Have you ever lost a friend who left without saying goodbye? Tell me where you're from and what this story made you feel. I read your comments every night before writing the next one.